asked when I met Steve was, how do you wake up at like 4 o'clock every morning? Like, what is going on, you guys? My name is Sulkar. Welcome back to the 4 Stars podcast. I'm here with my man, Steve Bechtold. You guys have seen him before, and we are back again. We just wrapped up an awesome shoot in the office studio space and figured, why not hop in and do a podcast real quick? So with that being said, guys, here's Steve, and let's get started.
All right. Well, thank you for having me back once again, like always. I actually, we were just talking right before we decided to shoot the podcast, and I'm always working on something new, something else going on. And we were just talking about your theory of, you want to start with that? A little bit of what you've been doing recently and how it's making you feel?
For sure, yeah. I mean, Steve's always been, somebody I go to for advice on anything that has to do with fitness and being in shape. And years ago, I was in really good shape because I really focused on it a lot. And recently, I think with quarantine and everything else, things start to slip out of line. You start drinking too much, you start eating poor foods, whatever it may be, you start sleeping in or whatever it may be. And I really wanted to kind of shock that. And I didn't really have a way to figure out how to break it. And I finally kind of wrote up this thing. I put it on Twitter of all places, but I kind of wrote up this like consensus of like my ideal diet and my ideal routine and what I think is sustainable long term. And just a little quick preface before we get into it. Essentially what it is 7 days a week you're in the gym, if not once, twice. Cardio every single day, 200 to 300 calories on like Stairmaster, whatever. It's a little bit better on the knees and joints. We've talked about that before. Versus running every day, a little bit more sustainable. No drinking any alcohol, nothing at all. If you have any other habits and hobbies that you like to do whatever you want. But I personally think cut them all out. The only supplement maybe are, your vitamins. And if you really need something to help you sleep, you know what I'm talking about. If you know what I'm talking about, use something like melatonin, right? So no alcohol, none of the green stuff, none of the, no cheat meals at all. So you're going to be doing 7 days a week, no cheat meals. I don't care, whatever. Doesn't mean you can't eat any carbs, but definitely, I think a more carb-restricted diet is better. Steve is a big proponent to Ezekiel bread, which is more digestible.
Low glycemic. Yeah, with carbs, that's a slippery slope for some people, and it's a really hot topic.
Yeah.
And I think, carbs sometimes get a bad rap.
Yeah.
They definitely have some benefit. And, when we look at keeping our gut healthy and our microbiome, and, I mean, this is all the research that's coming out right now is, we have our gut-brain axis, which literally the microbes we have in our gut, the food that we're fueling them is going to affect our neurotransmitters, how well we feel, how motivated we are. All of these are going to be correlated to the food we're bringing in. Yeah. And if we're not bringing in carbs and insoluble fiber or resistant starch, we're not going to be feeding those good bacteria. So I'm a huge proponent on keeping it in there. But for, I'd say 90% of people, unless you're looking to gain, which is not everybody's goal, or for high performance, it should be low glycemic for the most part.
Yeah.
Because then you're not getting these blood sugar spikes, you're not having these crashes. But those blood sugar spikes can be very beneficial if you're using it for performance-based outcome.
For sure. Yeah, no, I think, that's the thing with carbs, right? There's like a double-edged sword, but,
totally.
And people take they take like 3 approaches, right? Like, I'm okay with carbs, which I know people who have good metabolism, I personally don't think I do, who can, rip it out, which is cool, but they're still eating clean. I have people who, maybe do Atkins who have no carbs, which is a really easy way to lose weight, really easy way to bounce back into poorer habits. And you have people who do keto, which I've, did keto 6 years ago, tried it out just to see. I think you're going to have a really bad time in the gym because you're going to have no carbs. You're going to feel maybe clear mentally, but your workout's going to be kind of bad. You're not, I always like the feeling of like you finish a workout, you maybe supplement it with protein and some carbohydrates to like replenish and like refuel. And I never really got that feeling on that diet. So I think for me personally, the best is high protein, moderate fat, relatively low carb. If you're going to do carb, more so during the beginning of the day when you're going to be working out, after a workout, and still doing that fasted cardio in the morning. So wake up, 5, 6, whatever, get 6.5 to 8 hours of sleep, like we've talked about on previous podcasts, getting sleep, waking up pretty early, maybe having your caffeine then. I prefer maybe like a pre-made like canned energy drink or whatever, or like not like a Monster, but like a more vitamin-rich one that like, a pre-workout kind of supplement. And then I actually stopped drinking pretty much coffee too. So I think what I've learned through all this, just as a brief little consensus, is that everything in my life is optimized better. I have more energy. I feel way better. I'm definitely getting crazy in strength improvements very quickly because I like that muscle memory. And like an even mood, less stress, less anxiety, less, peaks and valleys. And that's why when I wrote that, it was just important. I wrote it in the Stairmaster at like 5:30 in the morning because I'm like, I need people to know like this can solve 90% of people's problems. And people are like, well, why doesn't it solve 100? It's like, listen, if you're still getting an A in life. If you have 10% of problems, it's fine, but you're literally starting at 0. So, if you're supplementing your stressors with drinking alcohol every day, and, then you drink alcohol, so you stay up till 2 a.m., and then you stay up until 2 a.m., so you do something like smoke, or you just stay up in bed, and then you drink until you fall asleep, and then you're waking up, so you're going to get shit sleep, then you're going to supplement it with coffee to wake up in the morning or whatever else. You're going to feel like shit in that department too. And it's just going to be this reemerging cycle. You're going to have the coffee, then your coffee to your wine, beer, alcohol, whatever at night, and then it's day after day after shitty food. You're not going to work out because you started drinking.
Well, it's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle. And, one thing that you brought up, going over all these different diets, each of them have a place and a right time. And I think each of them are specific to each person's body.
For sure.
I personally do not feel I respond very well with keto.
Yeah.
I can get lean. I think it's an amazing, amazing diet strategy for distance runners or for like high endurance. For sure. I think it trumps everything. For muscle building, for bodybuilding, I think it's very important to use your insulin levels because along with a spike in insulin, you're going to increase building and growth hormone signals within the body. So I think that that's great. And one thing you said was that you feel your body doesn't process the carbs as well.
Yeah.
And right now I'm wearing a continuous glucose monitor.
Yeah.
I have 2 brothers that I train that are 2 years apart.
Yeah.
And each of them wear the glucose monitor. And dude, it's so funny because the older brother, they're super competitive, but the older brother, his blood sugar will spike up a lot faster. And then the younger brother's blood sugar will drop a lot quicker. So, like we've talked about with different longevity hacks, I'm a big proponent of fasting.
Yeah.
So these brothers do 3-day or 4-day or 5-day fasts at the beginning of every month. And what's so funny is seeing the way that, they're genetically from the same biological parents, but their bodies respond so differently. The younger brother will get into a deep level of ketosis by the 3rd day, which basically just means that your body is not utilizing sugars anymore because it kind of burned it all off. It's still creating sugar from gluconeogenesis, so you don't need to call me out on it. But it's using ketones as a primary energy source. And when we're using those ketones, there's a lot of different benefits that happen within the body. And this is what we were talking about right before we came on. So this whole concept or whole field, everything, it's called hormesis. Hormesis, or a hormetic response. And really what hormesis is, or a hormetic response, is what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Right?
Yeah.
So our bodies, we have genes, right? We get our genes from mom and dad. But our genes don't really dictate our future. Our genes are just the instructions. It's kind of like we have this giant piano with 20,000 keys, and all these keys are a different protein that we could make. So depending on the environment, are you super stressed? Are you sweating your ass off on the Stairmaster after an hour?
Yeah.
Are you sitting in the cold meditating? Our body constantly is checking, hey, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
We've got all these sensors. It's like, a car. Your car has hundreds of sensors.
Yeah.
Our body has way more than that. All of our cells have all these different sensors. So even things like what time of the day it is, your blood pressure, your heart rate, your blood temperature, all of these create little responses and little triggers. And what we're finding is a stress like working out, right? Working out is a stress on the body. You can work yourself out to death. There's really no, you're breaking down muscle while you're working out. What happens, however, is that mild stress, that eustress, or good form of stress, of breaking down the muscles, then gives us the back end where we increase different responses within the body. We increase what's called heat shock proteins. Heat shock proteins also happen from the sauna whenever your body temperature goes up. So when the blood reaches a certain point and it gets hot, just like with an exercise or when we're breathing heavy, what's going to happen is our body creates these heat shock proteins, and these guys are like, oh shit, something's going on in the body. Let's call in the reinforcements. Let's call in the troops. So you get your entire army of heat shock proteins coming out, and they're like, all right, let's clean up shit and let's try and save the body before we die.
Yeah.
But let's say if you only do an hour workout, those heat shock proteins are still in your body. They're still in your system, and that's going to then give you benefits. And this is a lot of what they found in doing studies on sauna usage. The saunas, the studies behind the mortality rate, how much it helps people, of course, it's all like studies in Finland and stuff like that, where they use saunas all the time.
Yeah.
But it really gives you almost all the same benefits as exercise. And it's this hormetic response that, oh my gosh, I'm so hot in a sauna, I'm getting this really uncomfortable feeling. When you're sitting there, you're just like, fuck, like it's getting bad. You get that when you're working out too, or you're going on a run. So we know what endorphins are, right?
Yeah.
Those are those feel-good hormones. We have a flip side of that called dynorphins. And dynorphins are like the suck factor. Mm-hmm. And the suck factor, the more those dynorphins go up, they have a rebound effect. Let's think about this in the opposite way. Take a neurotoxin, alcohol. What happens when you feel it? It numbs everything down. You feel woozy. And then what happens? The body becomes hypersensitive because it's like, oh shit, like there's the toxin. We're losing control. Yeah, we like it, or at least we think so mentally, but our body thinks it's dying. What happens from there is we then become hypersensitive. So when this neurotoxin gets processed out of our system, when we're metabolizing it, our liver's going through it overnight, we wake up in the morning and all our nerves are hypersensitive because they're just like, what's going on? There was a toxin. I couldn't feel anything. And now when they're hypersensitive and you wake up and you see light, that light is brighter than it normally is. When you hear a sound, that sound is louder than it normally is. And if you already have a headache because you've got inflammation going on from getting shit night's sleep, fragmented sleep, and no deep wave sleep, I mean, you're at an insult to injury.
For sure.
So that's really the responses that your body has to these different, stressors or chemicals. And what we're finding out is if we can pulse or time that hormetic response properly with different stimulus, we can get a lot of these benefits. Sure. One of the big ones that I like that I've been doing now is cryotherapy. Yeah. I actually still prefer the cold shower, and don't prefer. That's not the way. I don't mean it that way. It sucks more. The shower sucks more. Getting into a bathtub with ice, getting into a cryo at the coldest setting that they let me do for 3 minutes, or getting in a cold shower. The cold shower is the worst one.
It's the worst.
I don't know why.
It's so bad. Oh God, yeah.
But it's really not. It is, but it's not. And that's the beauty of it, is those are those dynorphins. Yeah. And after researching more of this, I realized, like, dude, that suck factor is what I'm there for. Mm-hmm. Because what that actually does is it pushes an increase in norepinephrine levels.
For sure.
So being exposed in the cold for 2 minutes, I think it was like 1 degree Celsius water, which is freaking cold, boosted norepinephrine levels up to 180%.
Wow.
And these levels, this is what we look for with depressive drugs, with anti-anxiety pills. Yeah. So could we pulse this response by just taking a cold shower for 2 minutes a day, every day?
That's crazy.
And I'm actually reading Wim Hof's new book right now.
Yeah.
And he actually is pushing that, and that's what they're finding in the research. They're actually finding that by doing a cold shower, and in the book they're only saying 30 seconds a day, building up to 2 minutes at the end of your warm shower, just turning it cold, doing it for 30 days consecutively will drop your resting heart rate, will increase your muscle tone, because this is what happens, is when you hit cold water and that shit shocks your body, you get a gasp reflex. It takes your breath away. That's a natural response, but that is a response you can control.
Yeah.
And what happens is all of the muscles, we have millions of tiny little muscles all around our vasculature system. And this vascular system is the lifeline of our body. This is how we get oxygen, nutrients, everything to every single cell. And this is where those cells get the signals from our body, these responses. So if you get into the cold, all those muscles tighten up to then bring all the blood flow into the center of your body and keep it from the outside. What's going to happen is then when the periphery, when that blood gets down to 50 degrees, your internal body is going to start then transferring the blood. Mm-hmm. So you'll get in and you'll get this freezing feeling. And I don't know if you've experienced this with doing your cold showers. After a little bit, you're going to start feeling like you're warming up again.
It's weird, yeah.
And it's about, I'd say it's about 45 seconds. What I tell people when they're first doing it is turn that shower to cold. And it's not going to get cold right away. It's going to take 3 seconds. So you got 3 seconds to get your mind right. But then just focus on taking 10 deep breaths. So flip it all the way over and then go. It's going to try and make you breathe in. But you're going to take just 10 deep breaths, then bring it back to hot. Then back down cold, back up to hot. I'm experimenting with this now because as I was doing this research, I found that doing hot-cold contrasts can even give you a more robust norepinephrine release. Okay. And then I'm getting the heat shock proteins from doing the hot therapy. Then I'm getting all the blood to the peripheries because when you're hot, that's what your body does. To cool off the blood, it gets it to the outside, just like when you sweat and everything in the summer. And then I'm going cold. So really, your body works like a filter system. And I'm bringing all the blood to the edges, to the extremities, and then all the way back to the center, all the way to the extremities, all the way back to the center. And now, just what I've talked about with those different hormetic responses, basically your internal systems, your cells are like, what the is going on. We're hot, we're cold, but what that's doing is it's causing, that piano of all your genes to play genes that are going to make you resilient, that are going to make you combat these different stressors. And things that we see with this is a reduction in neurofactor kappa beta, which is a horrible macrophage neurofactor that usually relates to inflammation. So having this go down reduces overall systemic inflammation. So things like autoimmune diseases can have huge benefits from this. We also, I think I mentioned this, notice a drop in resting heart rate temperature. One thing that they brought up in the book that I thought was fascinating is people who normally get cold extremities, cold fingers, cold feet. He brings up a different exercise. You'll have to get the book to see which exercise. But he brings up a different exercise you can do to help work on the tone of the musculature in these capillaries to then build that tone and that strength to help self-regulate.
Wow.
I mean, it's fascinating. The studies that this guy has done, Wim Hof, and the things that they're seeing, the way that our mind can control our body, and the adaptive capability of our body is insane.
Yeah.
Even some of these hormetic responses are being used in cancer research. Dr. Walter Longo has something called the 5-day fasting mimicking diet. And what they found is with fasting, when you deprive your body of nutrients, of course, what do you think your body's thinking? Oh, shit's going wrong. We're going to die. Yeah. So it protects itself. And what it is imagine your cells are like, your body's a train, and the train is a fire engine train, and you're trying to go to the next stop. If you start fasting, they're like, dude, we're running out of coal. How are we going to make it to the next train station? And then the conductor says, you know what? Screw it. Go through all the carts. Let's look for all the seats that are jacked up. Any of the benches that are broken, break them down. Let's throw them in the fire. Mm-hmm. So when you're fasting for prolonged periods of time, when you're hitting these deep levels of ketosis, your body goes through something called autophagy. And autophagy means that it's eating itself. Mm-hmm. So when you are so deprived of nutrients, your body goes through and it says like, that cell's messed up. Let's eat it. That cell's messed up. Let's eat it. Yeah. And you also have all these organelles inside your cells. You've got all these different things. It's like in your kitchen. You got the blender, you got the microwave, you got all these different things. And some of them you don't use. Yeah. So they're like, shit, that microwave's been broken anyways. Throw it in the fire. Let's keep going. And it's going to utilize all of these kind of non-optimal cells or non-optimal components and use those to burn it off for energy. But then what happens is it actually stimulates stem cell growth. Wow. From, this is why it's so great for cancer patients. First off, when your body's in that stressed of a state, all of your cells go, batten down the hatches. We're going to sit here and protect ourselves. We're starving. We don't know what's going on. But then what happens to cancer cells is they don't listen to anybody. They're proliferating. They're like, hell yeah, we got a party going on here. We're making more. So then when you go into treatment, your normal cells are more in protect mode, while the cancer cells are more susceptible then to the treatment. So it's been used in conjunction with different therapies. It's just very hard because normally loss of appetite and loss in weight is something that coincides with cancer and cancer treatment.
Yeah, I think that's great. What a good analogy to show. I really like that training because it really showed how it gets broken down. It's like, let's get rid of the stuff we really don't use first, right?
And what's crazy with this is they've done biopsies on mice with this as part of Dr. Longo's experiments, and they find that literally the liver, the stomach, different organs will shrink. Like they can shrink up to 25%. Poor little mice, they cut them open and stuff. Yeah. But they shrink to 25%, and then in the other test subjects, when they refeed them, within 2 weeks they'll replenish back to the full size. However, the cells that are then replenished were used by that new stem cells that were released. So the organ after the fasting treatment is biologically younger than it was before.
Wow.
Isn't that fucking crazy?
That is nuts.
And that's from not eating. Now, there's different things, and, if you haven't done it before, there's steps and ways to build up to it. But the research around this is fascinating. Our body, when we put stress on it, dude, this thing responds insane. Yeah. Now, my quest and my, what fascinates me is, damn, you could get all those benefits from fasting 3 days. Like, can I take a pill that gives me that? Yeah. And they do. Really? They do have some of this. So it's called a Xeno-hormetic response. Okay. So have you ever heard of resveratrol?
No.
So resveratrol, some of you might have heard of this one. Resveratrol is like, remember, you ever heard people say like wine's good for you, wine's anti-aging. So a polyphenol in there, the dark pigment, these great little things that we get from there. Resveratrol actually stimulates this hormesis in our body. What we found is they're actually more concentrated in grapes that went through like a drought right before they're harvested. And I heard that this is something that they do with wine grapes, is depending on the stress, and that's why different years can yield different flavors, is how stressed the grape is makes it more concentrated.
Wow.
So what they found is this compound resveratrol, when they stressed these grapes before they harvested them, it shot it way up. And then when we consumed this resveratrol inside our body, it shot up a lot of our hormetic responses, a lot of our anti-aging and protective responses. And this sounds so crazy, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
We evolved with nature. You know, sure. we are made to eat foods that are in season, that are local around us. Mm-hmm. So let's say if grapes are having a drought, we're having a drought.
Yeah.
You know? So whenever we eat food that is somewhat stressed or has had this stress on it, it's going to translate into our biology because the chemicals, the structure of these molecules has changed, and whether it's higher concentrations or lower concentrations. So we can take different supplements from plants that are going to mimic this hormetic response within our body.
That's nuts. That makes a lot of sense, though. I mean, I guess this, whole podcast will be kind of about body optimization, and the beauty of it, not just looking the certain way, not just feeling a certain way, but both. Like, how can you do, and then prolonging it, right? Because some people who watch this might be, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and it's like the earlier, obviously, you do it, the better, and even later on, it doesn't matter. Like, do those things that are better to make you start with feeling better, then go to looking and aging better, right?
So the biggest thing, we talked about sleep before. Mm-hmm. I'd say from today's podcast, the biggest thing that I can recommend is start with the cold showers.
Yeah.
I mean, the mental control you gain from the introspection of being able to say, like, you're going to be okay. Most of us, our showers don't get much colder than 60 degrees. You're not going to die in there. But it's being able to talk yourself through that and really surrender into the feeling that's going to give you just so much mental power and clarity, because that's the same muscle you use. I call it a muscle, but that's the same mental framework that you use when you then want to say no to a cheat meal, when you want to say no to something else. You're building this willpower that is a muscle.
For sure.
It really is a neurological connection. What it is, it's your medial prefrontal cortex being able to say, hey, I'm sitting here in the watchtower. What is going on?
Yeah.
Is this something that's okay? Whereas your amygdala is like, we're going to die. Yeah. We're hungry. Eat something. Get out of the cold. But then you could just be like, dude, we're going to be in here for 30 seconds. Chill out and let's see what the body can do. No pun intended.
That's so funny, because I think about that. I always said that with exercise, and I just kind of came up with this because of what made sense. But it was like, if you work out in the morning, it's going to dictate the rest of your day. People always say it's going to dictate the rest of your day, but it's like, no, it actually does. Because if you take the willpower to say, hey, I did this yesterday, I did 300 calories on Stairmaster, it took me 30 minutes, whatever it is, you do it again, you're like, all right, that's done. I can guarantee you, add that variable into your day, and your ability or your wantingness to eat pizza for lunch is going to go down 100x. You're going to be like, fuck that. Why would I do that? I just burned 300 calories. I just did all this willpower move. It's a compounding effect. I already did this. Why would I do that? Why would I drink then? Why would I drink alcohol when I just did all that? I'm not going to throw that away. But as soon as you give it up, it's just a tumbling effect. It's the same reason people always say, well, when I get drunk, I eat all this bad food. And it's like, well, what do you think? You're losing your willpower because your brain's not in its, whatever, the right
same thing is it's everything snowballs.
Yeah.
The positive effects snowball, so do the negative effects. Mm-hmm. We talked about sleep. You cut your sleep in half one night. The next day you're going to be more reactive. Because your brain's hyperstimulated. It didn't have enough time to relax. So now when you see images, of food, they're going to spike you. You're going to have a more reactive response where you're going to give into these cravings. Number two, you're going to have more of the hunger hormone circulating in your body. Mm-hmm. So you're going to constantly feel hunger. And then on top of that, when you do eat, you're not going to have enough leptin, which is the satiety hormone. So you're not even going to feel full when you do eat. So you're basically, and your body doesn't produce insulin and as well, and it doesn't regulate blood sugar as well. So it's like your body is more susceptible to being fat. You're going to feel hungrier. You're not going to get full. And you're going to be agitated and not be able to control yourself. This is just a snowball effect, right? And then the same thing with the hot cold. I think those two together give a huge benefit. Some of the research I saw recently, I was just speaking with my grandmother, and she's trying to exercise. She's 88, and I looked up, and there's a lot of cardiac and heart surgery, where they're now using hot and cold therapy to actually train the body. And in older demographics where they cannot exercise due to different joint issues, what they're finding is the hot and cold, the pushing the blood out and in, the tone of the vasculature system is giving them these great benefits.
That's
and
awesome.
It's cutting down recovery time. It's insane by hot and cold. So it's one of those things that we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
For sure.
And that principle will play out positively in every other area of our life.
Love that.
So I think starting every single day with something that sucks.
Yeah.
You know, so waking up and working out.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to suck.
Yeah.
It's just, it's kind of, you have to make yourself. So I wake up and I start every day with meditation. And like, I mean, I like meditating, but every single day there's that kind of like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of sleeping. That's kind of like meditating. You know, like your brain tries to talk you out of it. Or cold showers or working out. If you can start your day by getting that little voice in your head and just saying, you know, get in place, sit down, and we're going to do this.
For sure.
The whole rest of your day, it's going to stay sitting in its place.
I love that. I think, with that too being said, a lot of people will listen to that and say, I've tried that, it's not going to work. And I would be a proponent to tell you, yes, I know. Because I know you've tried everything in the sun. I've tried a lot of different things to optimize. The first question I asked when I met Steve was, how do you wake up at like 4 o'clock every morning like you did? Because I ask everyone that. I'm like, what do you do? And there's never really like, everyone has their different responsibilities, different things. But what I would say is do whatever it takes to trick your brain. And the best word to use is literally trick. Because the power of habit, you know, read that book and figure out ways, signals you can give your brain to say, hey, we're doing this. And use that signal every single day.
Yep. One thing that I had, I never said this before, well, I've never told you before, is I used to have a quote in picture frame right behind my alarm clock that said, I don't sleep, so my dreams are my reality.
That's awesome.
And I used to, because I'd like look at the alarm clock, and I also had it on another table, which is a good thing to do, because then I had to physically get up to go turn it off. So I'd go up to go turn it off, and it's like, you know, if you see a quote like that, or at least for me, quotes for me, I like sit there and I'm like, oh, you hit me deep.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And if you need something like, way back, it was like a turning on the coffee machine, and now it's like sometimes it's like cracking open, which I know whatever, it's maybe not the most economical thing, but like cracking open a can of like a little pre-workout, whatever. It's like you take a sip of it, you're like, all right, let's go.
Yep.
And you know, you can always change those things later in your routine. You could take those out, you could cut them out, you can cut out the melatonin that's making you go to sleep at 9 or 10 o'clock. But you can't change the fact that you got 8 hours of sleep, and you can't change the fact that I went to the gym in the morning.
Yep.
You could fix all the little intricacies later that you want to pick apart, but if you need a trigger, use it, abuse it, use the tricks, make your brain love it, and get in the routine. And then your routine compounds, and then you're on this, you know, great kind of trajectory towards a nice optimized life.
Yep. So I think the biggest thing to take away from this is start the end of your shower with a hot-cold contrast.
Yeah.
You know, and even if it's at 15 seconds first, just take it, drop it down. If you could have a little stopwatch over there, or if you want to count your breaths, I'd say at least do 5 breaths.
Yeah.
I think most of people can start out with 10, but then switch it back up. Get warm, switch it back cold. Maybe you only do 1 for 15 seconds the first day. You know, then after a week of it, you build up to 30 seconds. Then all of a sudden you do 30 seconds cold, back to hot, back to 30 seconds cold. If you can build it up to about 2 minutes, I guarantee you're going to notice so many differences in every aspect of your life, not just physical health.
I love that. Well, sweet. I'm glad we were able to get that talk, and I think it was awesome. I think it's good and reflective for other people starting their fitness journey or in between it. Not just fitness, but life optimization. That's what we're going to call it.
Definitely.
And I think we're going to do a lot more talking on it soon. You guys can check out all Steve's stuff on Instagram at Steven_Bechtold. Steven.Bechtold. You check out my stuff at Kyle Sulkar or Sulkar_media for all the work stuff. And then at 4 Stars Podcast, we've been posting a lot of new clips on there. So you guys can kind of get bite-sized pieces of the podcast and some behind-the-scenes stuff. So that being said, guys, thank you so very much for watching today. This is the 4 Stars Podcast. Keep chasing the 5th. Peace.